Good day, viewers. Welcome to another Lewin Academy economical video. Today we'll be talking about elasticity of demand. So first, let's talk about the topics that we'll be covering for the video. We'll be defining elasticity. We'll be doing price elasticity of demand, which comprises of its calculation, interpretation, price elasticity of demand diagrams, factors influencing price elasticity of demand, and how total revenue affect price elasticity of demand. Now, before I go further, there are different types of elasticity. In economics, we focus on price elasticity of demand. We have income elasticity of demand, and we also have cost elasticity of demand. However, we will only be focusing on price elasticity of demand in this video. Okay, so elasticity in itself, it measures the responsiveness of a change in one variable to a change in another variable. So to make it more clearer, let's focus on the elasticity of demand. So when you talk about demand, we're talking about measurable. The elasticity of demand, we're talking about how responsive persons are to a change in price. Based on, so will a person's demand decrease if a price should increase in terms of elasticity, or will they respond negative or positive? How will they respond to the change in price, or will their demand be reflected? So that's what we're talking about. So it basically measures the how responsive consumers are when there is a change in price. Alright. There are two ways to calculate price elasticity of demand. We have the point method and we have the ARC method. The point method is just simply, it's an easier way of calculating it, however, it's not very accurate. So this method is usually used when only a relative small change in price occur. Like for example, from say price will decrease from $8 to $6, you know, when there's a relatively small amount. So how to calculate this? We have a percentage and point method. The point method focuses on the percentage changes. So we have a percentage change in quantity demanded divided by a percentage change in price. Alright? So to remember it more easily, what you can do is you can label it. So you can label the first price Q1 or the second price Q2, first quantity Q1 and the second quantity Q2. And what you do is you can say, if you label the first one Q1 and the second one Q alone, then you could say Q1 minus Q divided by Q, and P1 minus P all divided by P. Simple, right? Alright, we're going to be looking at an example of this method, but further, just like how it's already on the screen, let's just talk about the ARC method. Now the ARC method is a more complex way of calculating it, but it's also pretty simple. Only difference is you find the difference in the numerator, and in the denominator you look at the average quantity or the average price. So first you look at the quantity. So you say the second quantity minus the first, all divided by the average of the two quantities that change. So you say Q1 plus Q0 all divided by 2, and then you divide that by a difference in the changing price, all divided by an average. So let's look at an example for you to understand much better. Say for example, the price changed from $6 to $7, right? So calculate the PED when prices increase from $6 to $7. So what will happen if you should increase price by just $1? To use the point method, we will label it. So we label this $6 Q1 and you label the $7 Q2, right? Because you know the Q1 will be the first price, Q2 will be the second price. So the quantity at $6 was 1,900 units, and the quantity at $7 was 900 units. right? So let's see what happened. Let's see what's the elasticity. Let's measure how responsive consumers are. So we say 900, which was Q2, divided by the 1900, which is Q1, all divided by Q1, 1900, right? And then we're gonna divide all of this by the changing price. So we say P2, 7 minus 6, all divided by P1, which is 6. And if you should do your calculations, then you will realize that your answer will be 3.68, right? Pretty simple, don't it? Very, very simple. And you can also try, you can probably switch the numbers and you can put 8 right here and probably 9 right here and do it on your own and see what the answer that you derive. Alright, so what if we did the ARC method? What if we wanted a more precise or an accurate figure, an accurate response? You could use the ARC method. So you remember in the ARC method, you first find the difference of the quantity, all divided by the average of the quantity. Together, we'll be dividing it by changing price divided by the average price. So we have 900, which was still Q2 minus Q1, which is 1900, all divided by the average of the above figures. And then we do the same thing for the price. We say 7 minus 6, all divided by the average of the price. And if you should do your calculation, as you see right here, then we have a negative 4.64. Now, pay little or no attention to the negative sign. It just simply means that demand is going in an inverse or negative direction. So the negative sign when calculating demand or elasticity of demand, it just simply means that the demand is negative. Because remember, with demand, it goes in opposite direction, a negative or an inverse, have an inverse relationship with price. So as price increases, the demand decreases, and if price should decrease, then the demand will increase. So there's a negative relationship. So the ARC elasticity formula is used if the change in price is relatively large. It is more accurate and it measures elasticity than simple price elasticity, right? Okay, so we had our figures. Now we'll be interpreting those figures. So for example, you have this man right here saying, I am a slave to the price. Another one who's leaning and lying down, he says, I can buy as much as I want. So you will understand why they are both saying this in just a minute or less. Okay. Interpretation of PED. Now there are approximately 5 interpretations. Some persons only give 3, but there are actually 5 interpretations. And they are from the perfectly inelastic to the perfectly elastic. Now what you use to interpret these elasticity of demand are what their figure is. So you have a range in which each falls. So perfectly inelastic, that one is completely 0. So that's equal to 0. And at this point, you're basically saying that you are not so responsive to price change. You are not very responsive. So for example, in the medical field, if you're asthmatic, if you have a medical condition and the medication should increase, the price of the medication should increase, you will still buy that medication even though the price increased because you don't want to die. So your demand right there will be perfectly inelastic. You have no control. You have to just buy it. Then we have, what if you calculate your elasticity of demand and it is between 0 and 1? Between 0 and 1, then your elasticity of demand will just be inelastic. It won't be perfectly inelastic. It will just be inelastic. You're still not very responsive to a changing price, but you're also more responsive than a perfectly inelastic demander, right? Now, what if you calculate it and you only get 1? Then it means that you have a unitary elasticity, right? Means that the same amount of change there is in price, that's the same amount of response you will give to your demand will be giving to the market. And also, what if it's greater than 0, well, greater than 1, but less than infinity? Then your elasticity of demand will just be elastic. That means you have a positive response to a change in price. So you can respond. So for example, you have a car and you want a new car, but what if the price of the new car that you want probably increase? Then you can respond to that change in price and you can decide not to buy that car. So your demand will be elastic. You have a change, you have a power to change and say, well, yes, you want to buy the car, or no, you don't want to buy the car. However, if you calculate your elasticity and it's just infinity, like you calculate it and it's just infinity, then you know that's perfectly elastic. That's a perfectly elastic demand, and you have a lot of change. You are very responsive to a change in price. You can actually decide whether or not to buy that good. So whatever the change in price, that's what really determines your type of elasticity. Alright, so let's look at the diagrams that are associated with the different interpretations of elasticity. So for the first diagram right here, you know that's a perfectly inelastic demand. And what I always used to remember it is you have an I, this kind of look like an I for inelastic. So it's just like a long vertical straight line. So that's perfectly inelastic. For this one, inelastic demand is just inelastic. You basically just shift this one a little bit to the left, like you just shift it, tilt it. So you can always remember that this is just elastic. And we have perfectly elastic. Now this kind of look like an E, don't it? That's what I used to remember it, because this looks like a kind of an E. So E for elastic, so it's just perfectly elastic. And what if your demand is just elastic without any perfect with it? Then you basically just tilt this one a bit, like you just tilt it. So that's just elastic. And for unitary shapes like a normal demand curve. Kind of have a look at U look to it, side U look to it. So that's what unitary is all about. Alright. Now by the way, if for variations in the demand curve, you can use one demand curve to determine the type of elasticity there is. So at the top of the demand curve, your demand will be more elastic, because the change in price you have a more responsive change. You have a more responsive. If there's a change in price, you can be more responsive. In the middle, it's more unit elastic. It's more unitary. The same amount of change in price, that's the same amount of demand that you will give. And for the ending of the demand curve, which is more than likely less than 1, then that's more inelastic. So remember, the top is elastic, middle unitary, and the bottom part is always inelastic. Right, so that is basically the end of this particular part of the presentation. However, I'll be continuing with the factors influencing the price elasticity of demand, as well as how the price elasticity of demand affects the total revenue, whether it increases or decreases total revenue. I'll also be looking at that. So you can find the link to the second part of this video in my description below. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel, Ruin Academy. And you can always email me if you have any questions, or if you have any particular economical or math problem that you would like to be solved. You can also email me and I can do a video presentation on it. Thank you for watching. Bye.